The 2025 Canyon Aeroad. One of my channel viewers has sent this one in to me for me to review for them. This video isn't going to be a review, that's coming as the next video, so subscribe for that. This one is going to be a walk around of the bike, and there's a few things I want to go over. Of course, all the changes they've made from their previous generation. So this is the 4th generation of Canyon Aeroad. I want to try and spot the differences. Unfortunately, I don't have the version 3 Canyon Aeroad to directly compare it to, so I'm going to be going off memory here. But they have made some convenience updates for us, and they've also made some aerodynamic updates for us, and they've made some stiffness updates for us as well. Of course, I'm going to weigh the bike in later as well at the end. You can probably see this is quite a large one. This is the set frame size large, which fits me. I'd imagine most people would be buying the medium or the small sizes. So let's get into it, and I'm going to see if I can spot those changes. Number one, the first thing they've changed is the wheels. So they used to come stocked with a 60mm deep wheel. They have taken that down to 50mm. The reason they've done that is to save weight on the bike, because obviously shallower wheels are going to be lighter. But apparently they've managed to keep the bike as aero or more aerodynamic because of the changes they've made to the frames. By going to the shallower rim and losing a bit of weight there, I'm hoping it's made the bike a little bit more snappy and a little bit more energetic in its stock build here. Currently set up tubeless at the moment by the owner. The bike comes stock, thank God, with some GP5000 STR tyres. But thankfully there is no need to change the tyres out straight away on this bike. You're ready to roll as it is. With that being said though, of course for aerodynamic purposes, they have stocked the front wheel here with a 25mm tyre, and by modern standards that's pretty damn narrow, to be honest. I think that's probably to fit this wheel perfectly here. But they have stocked the rear wheel with a 28, so a little bit more comfort. First thumbs up there, Canyon. The shallower front wheel as well should reduce the impact of side winds on this bike. Of course, with its super deep tubes here, this bike does feel the side winds a little bit. The next change that they've done is the new updated handlebar. So not only do you have the options to choose your bar width, which I think is actually very nice, they've introduced the gear groove here that has come from the Canyon Grail. Now, looks wise, when you first see it, it kind of sticks out a little bit, but I bet after 2 to 3 weeks, your brain will never ever see this again. So I don't think it's too bad. But the one beautiful thing I really, really love about this is that you can fit the aero bars to it. And when you fit the TT aero bars to it, this thing must become an absolute weapon. And to be quite honest, if you were going to choose one bike that you had to time trial or triathlon on and use as a road bike, I think this probably has become the staple choice because of that. There are other bikes that you can attach the aero bars to, such as the Scott Foil and the Cervelo S5, but this, to my eyes, looks like the easiest one to do. It literally just looks like you unbolt this, clip it on, bolt it back on, job done. Now the next good thing about these bars that the Canyon have done is these are not them, but they have introduced a new pace handlebar that lets you go even narrower, so you can swap these bar ends out. You quite literally have 2 Torx bolts under there. It's very easy, although of course you'll have to redo the brake cables. And you can go even narrower with the pace bars, and they also have a bit more of a flare to them. Arguably, they should maybe become stocked with a pace bar, especially the Aeroad here. But I'm glad that it's still an option that can be done for the Aeroad here. Next up, another great thing about Canyon is that you can adjust the height of the stack here, so you can simply take the spacers out. On the back here, they simply unclip. You can lower the whole stem there. Of course, the range of movement isn't massive. It looks like 2 centimeters there, but 2 centimeters of adjustability is better than none. And you can do all of that without having to chop the stem, so I think that's quite nice there. The seat post here, the seat post to me looks updated. Like I said, I don't have the old one next to me, but to my eyes, it looks narrower from the front. So it is narrower than one finger there, or one of my fingers, with a nice sharp nose on it and a flat back. I do love how Canyon come with these 2 mounting bolts here. So this one here is for a rear light that the owner's got on it. But of course you can fit a bottle on here. So if you want to get an extra storage of bottle, Probably for triathlon, if you've got the gear groove mounted on the front there with the TT bars, then you can have some extra storage there. So not only does the seat post look narrower from the front, to my eyes it looks narrower from the side as well. It looks slimmer in this direction, not quite as deep, and I would imagine both of those options probably add a little bit of compliance to the bike here. I'm hoping it does anyway, because the previous generation had a fairly rough rear end to the bike. So I'm hoping that this has reintroduced some more compliance. Now, if we come to the front of the bike, going into the head tube area, now this, to me, like I said, I don't have the previous generation next to me, but this to me looks narrower than the previous generation, which is fantastic. The narrower you can get the bike, the less area you have, the faster it's going to be. Of course, adding a bit more width for the top and bottom headset bearing there, because they need to be big enough. Not only is it narrower, I think they've added a bit more depth to this head tube, and here's the way that I think that they have done it. So the head tube can only be so deep because of the UCI regulations, but Canyon have used their brain here. Instead of just using the head tube or maximizing the head tube depth, essentially what they've done is they've used the down tube, and you can see the down tube practically extends the depth of this head tube here. So you can see that for some of the head tube is this deep, whilst probably the legal UCI limit is about that deep. So that I think they've managed to bend the UCI rules quite nicely there. This is not confirmed. This is just me making assumptions here. The forks, beautifully bladed. They're a lovely shape, these ones. Just like your normal like knacker duck shape, so a bit wider on the front here, narrower blade on the back, and just some good depth, almost like 3 fingers deep there, so really deep forks. One thing that looks really nice aesthetically is they have gotten rid of the through axles. So there's only through axles on one side, but you can't see it on this side. Of course, you're going to need the access here if you need it on this side to remove those wheels. I know if you accidentally thread the other side out, you're going to have a nightmare job getting these out here. But at the end of the day, I've never seen anyone do it, so I think closing off the other side is a more than viable option. I also think it's going to be hard to pick it up on camera, but this might be the best view of it. They've done as much as they can to hide this brake caliper, or make the brake caliper part of the frame. So you can see there is this kink right here, this bump area. If I try and show you from the front, you can see that right here is just very slightly wider than the rest of the fork. It's quite subtle, it's quite hard to tell. Maybe from that angle you can see it right there. And it just hides that brake caliper just a little bit more. Of course, there's only so much that you can do with the UCI restrictions. The top of the frame also looks narrower to me, the top tube. So of course, starting wider at the front, and it thins out and becomes skinnier and skinnier toward the back here. And it's not a very wide seat stay at all, like as wide as my thumb. So it really tapers off towards the back of the frame here. Tons of depth in the seat tube. You can see lots there, 3.5 fingers wide. So really deep there. And of course, hugging the rear wheel in the seat tube section here. Pretty much any time trial bike that you see, not all of them, but pretty much most of them, will always hug the rear wheel here, so it's definitely the fastest option. Now, strangely, on the Canyon Aeroad, this is one of the more visual differences between the previous generation. On the previous generation, these rear stays, there's a gap in this section here. Now, aerodynamically, I think filling this in probably doesn't make it more aerodynamic. The reason I think they have filled this in is to stiffen up the rear triangle a little bit here. Apparently one of the feedback that they got from their pro riders is they did want more stiffness in the rear triangle. The down tube looks almost exactly the same as me, slightly sharper nose, flat back. It's really skinny, it's not very wide at all. You see a lot of bikes nowadays trying to hide these bottle cages. You can see that Canyon, well, clearly they don't need to, and they haven't even stocked the bike with like integrated bottle cages. I guess it's just so fast as it is already, they might not need to. Visually, I can't remember exactly how the previous generation looked here. I kind of feel like maybe there's a bit more carbon in this space here, and you kind of see in the seat tube there, it looks a little bit deeper again, so I'd imagine that adds more stiffness in that section right there. Make the bike feel a little bit more snappy and a little bit stiffer at the bottom bracket area. With the chainstays, I think nothing too crazy to report here. Starts to narrow and of course comes out wider to make space for the wheel. And once again, it looks like Canyon have done as much as possible to hide and aerodynamically optimize those calipers and disc brakes there. Seems like there's lots of depth here. I reckon this section is a little bit deeper. There's a kink there. And I reckon they've added a bit more depth to the rear triangle just to try and hide a bit more or clean up a little bit more air around that section. That looks really lovely there. It just looks more encased, that area. Now, one thing that's always really, really hard to pick up on camera is the angle of these rear stays. I think Canyon have taken a page out of Scott's book here, where the seat stays here are angled inwards this way a bit more to throw air into the back wheel. I don't know exactly how it works, but I'd imagine there's a little bit less air pressure there, so throwing more air into it will reduce the drag from behind this section. That's just a guess, I'm not an aerodynamicist. And finally, where these seat stays attach into the seat tube here, nice and sleek, nice and slim, trying to control the air as much as possible. As I mentioned earlier, Canyon have done a few things to try and make the livability of this bike frame a little bit better for us consumers. Some things I really like, some things I'm impartial to. Let's get into them. Now, the first one, I cannot believe that other manufacturers do not do this. And they've just added this small plastic strip here so you can actually rest your fork on the floor without damaging the paint job. The amount of bikes I've seen with all the scratched up paint here, and they've just added this teeny bit of plastic, I think that is fantastic. It's simple, it's smart, and it works. The next thing that they've done is try to change as many bolts as possible to a T25 bolt. Now for me, the T25s, I find they tend to be a little bit shallow. I wish they were a bit deeper for me. Not that it slips or anything, I just feel like I'm more secure without a T25. So which ones have they changed on here? Preload adjustment, T25. Two T25s down there. T25 for the seat bolt. T25 for the seat clamp. Not T25 for the through axles. They're normal 6 bolt size. Different bottle cages, so I'm going to let them off for not having T25 on there. And the gear groove as well. It looks like a normal 4mm Allen head. I feel like the angles of the bike are just so Canyon. They have these perfectly slanted streaks either side there, and then countering them with both the fork and the seat stay there with a flat top tube. Looks really good. Tyre width for this bike, maximum stated tyre width is 32mm, so you can see that's a 25 there. You've got acres of space in the front there. And on a 28, once again at the top you have loads of space, and well, even at the bottom on a 28 there, it looks like there's tons of space between the rear wheel and the chainstay. It's really hard to get it without it being blurry. So it says 32. I'd imagine if you wanted to run really wide on this bike, you probably could squeeze a bit more to a 34mm in there. Don't quote me on that. Paint jobs. One thing I really love on these new paint jobs is the chrome logos. I feel like they just show a little bit more and they show a little bit better. They've got almost a bit of texture to them. These stripes on the back here are lovely. And on the CFR models, they seem to be adding a bit more detail. Like this one has the silver flecks of paint in it. They do a blue version that's really deep and really, really rich on these paint jobs. There's a blue version of this, that is my favorite. They have a full white one as well that also looks magnificent. But one thing I actually do miss on the Canyon paint job is that chop, that streaky chop on top. I think it made it look a little bit more racy and a little bit more aggressive, but that's just a personal preference. I liked the chop. Canyon Aeroad CFR size large with pedals, so I'm expecting it to be a little bit heavier than yours might come. It is also tubeless setup, so should be lighter than a butyl, and of course bottle cages as well. Okay, as that settles, that is bang on 7.6 kilos for what is guaranteed to be one of the most aerodynamic bikes that you can buy. I think that's pretty good. Well guys, there is my walk around of the version 4 2025 Canyon Aeroad. I hope all the differences I found and spotted there are in fact true. And I think as a whole, the changes they've made are really positive for the bike. Like I said, if you want the ride review, I'm going out on this bike tomorrow, so it will be the next video coming out in the timeline, so subscribe for that. If you have any questions that I've missed in this video that you don't think have been answered, you can always ask them down below, or you can find me over here on Instagram as well, where you can see my daily shenanigans. But other than that, I've been Jason. This has been Cycling Unboxed. I'll see you in another video.